Hi. As somebody who's been playing Chargeblade ever since it debuted in Monster Hunter 4 and has played it in every game since then, this iteration of the weapon is definitely one of my favorites. In addition, with Monster Hunter Wilds becoming a wildly popular Monster Hunter game with many new players joining us and many old players picking up new weapons, I thought that as somebody who's been playing this weapon for 10 plus years, it might be fun to make a basic guide that kind of goes over some basic stuff on the weapon, some advanced stuff, some tips and tricks. Basically anything and everything that can reduce the complexity of this weapon. Even though I don't think it's super complex as many people online make it out to be, it definitely is a weapon that has a lot of things happening. But before we go into any sort of mechanics or weapon attacks or whatever, we need to talk about the actual charge blades themselves. And don't worry, I don't have any spoiler weapons or armor on, so you don't gotta like freak out. Whenever you are forging a charge blade, you'll notice that in the stats information, there's file types. There's impact files and elemental files. So the difference is that some attacks on charge blade will discharge a file. So with impact files, they'll do non-elemental big damage that can stun a monster. Whereas with elemental files, they'll do big elemental damage that cannot stun a monster. Usually impact files tend to be the most like comfortable kind of general use, because with elemental files, you run the risk of fighting a monster who is either resistant or immune to an element. So for example, I have this Ragdown charge blade. If you were to fight a monster who's resistant to thunder and you use this thunder elemental file weapon, it's not going to be a very good time. So impact files tend to be better, and you can definitely find there's many charge blades that have like elemental, like they have like elemental like attack, but they have impact files. But at the end of the day, I'd say kind of play around with whatever, because elemental files can also be quite decimating on monsters who are weak to certain elements. It's definitely just something to play around with and kind of get creative. So don't feel like you need to be constrained to one or the other. One last thing before we discuss any sort of attacks or whatever is the sort of UI. So you notice like underneath the health bar and the stamina bar and the sharpness bar on the top left, there are four kind of main icons we need to pay attention to. There is a sword icon, a shield icon, an axe icon, and what looks like little jars called files. What each of those icons mean, we'll kind of discuss as I'm showcasing the sort of attacks of the weapon. So to start with just the basics, Charge Blade is a weapon that has two modes. So if I draw it out, there's the sword mode. In sword mode, you have a sword and you have a shield. You're also very mobile. As you can see, my walk speed's pretty good. And of course you have the, with the shield, you have the ability to block. The downside with sword mode is your attacks are quick, but they don't hit as hard, right? They only do a bit of damage. However, if we go into axe mode, you notice that I walk around a bit slower and my attacks are a little bit slower. But look at that. Boom, 68 damage. That's on a wound. On a non-wound, 43. Boom, once again, 43. So you can see axe mode does more damage. So then you might be thinking, why should I ever go into sword mode? Quite simple. One, you get the ability to block, and blocking is pretty good, right? Because you get to, reduce the damage you get, you reduce the damage you take. But another good thing is that in sword mode, it basically allows you to make your axe mode stronger. And there's a few ways you can do that. As you can see right now, my sword is glowing yellow. And if you look at the top left, you can see my little file icons are glowing yellow. What does that mean? Well, if you hold the guard button and you see you can look at the top right and see like the weapon attacks, you notice there's a charge button. So if you press circles or B, you can charge your files. And you see they kind of fill in with like little white. Now, what does that do? Well, quite simple. So first, let me just kind of showcase, if you look at the top right again, you notice that there's two kind of important attacks with axe mode. There's amped element discharge and just element discharge. Now, as the name suggests, with the discharge, if you do those attacks, it'll discharge a file, as you can see. And what that does is, in addition to the actual hit that you did, right? So you hit him with the axe, it'll do a little follow-up file explosion. And so that's kind of going back to those file types I mentioned, right? With the impact files, it'll do a little boom, non-elemental explosion that can stun the monster after enough hits, right? If you don't have any files, and if I do it, see, there's no explosion. So you want to go into sword mode and kind of smack the monster, and as you kind of just hit the monster with, you know, let's just say this basic triple attack, you see your files will turn yellow. If you keep going, you see they turn red. Now the difference here is when you do yellow and you know, hold down your block button and charge, it'll only charge up 3 files. With red, it does all of them. However, there is one level above red, which is just like super red. So let me just kind of showcase that really quickly. So you can see my files and my sharpness bar are like freaking out, and my sword is also looking crazy, right? It's like molten. So this is basically overheated mode. And what this does, and whenever you hit the monster with the sword, it bounces off. So basically you don't want this to happen. So whenever you have this, charge your files immediately. Now, if you notice, when I charge my files there, they are now yellow and have like a little explosion coming out the top. Those are called overcharge files. And they're very basic. We'll kind of talk, they're really easy to understand. We'll talk about it more when we get to the weapon icons in a little bit. So like I mentioned before, with the sword, shield, and axe icon, those mean something. So if I go to my, you know, if I kind of just like get my focus mode here. So if you hold down the B button or the circle button, you can do charged rising slash. So let me do that. This is like your premier move to kind of do to charge your files, because if you do it 2 times, you see mines are red now. So I'm going to block, charge my files. So now when you have files loaded in, there's something you could do now. You have access to a new thing, which is the ability to charge your shield. And this is definitely one of the most important things you can do with the charge blade. How do you charge your shield, you might ask? There's 2 ways. First way, we'll just kind of say, our first way, actually we'll start with silver. First way is in sword mode. If you hold down block and you charge and you hold down the circle / B button, you can do elemental boost. And that, as you can see, charges your shield. If you look at the top left, you see the little icon. It's now like glowing. The second way is in axe mode. If you do the amped element discharge move by pressing triangle and circle, or Y and B at the same time, but you press right trigger right before the attack goes, you'll do an elemental round slash, and that'll also charge your shield. So with your shield charged, you basically gain access to a lot of things. The shield charge does like does a lot of stuff. So the first thing it does is it allows you to charge your sword. So if I charge my files, doesn't matter which kind, just yellow is fine. So if I do the charge and then hold down triangle or Y, I can now do condensed element slash, and now my sword is like glowing with little lightning. And what having a charged sword does is every hit you do with a sword now does a little file explosion. And so you can, you know, stun monsters with this. Very fun. Hi to whoever is watching this video. This is just like this is like editing me, because I realized that in the sword mode section, or the charge sword mode section, I forgot to mention something. And it's that the charged sword also has another really, really cool like built-in feature, and is that when you have a charged sword, I can't really show it here, but actually wait, maybe I can. Hold on. Is that it comes built in with a special skill. So if you remember, I mentioned how that if your sword is in this like overloaded super critical mode, that if you attack a monster, your weapon will bounce off. But if your sword is charged, see, it doesn't bounce off anymore. But that's because charged sword comes in, or when you charge your sword, it has built-in Mind's Eye, which is a skill that you can get. And what Mind's Eye does is that it prevents your weapon from bouncing off the hard parts of monsters. There are some monsters in this game where they have like certain parts of their body that are like really hard. So if you hit it, your weapon's going to bounce off. So the nice thing about charged sword is that it basically prevents that from happening. Right, so see, now my weapon's bouncing again. So that's just something I forgot to mention. Yeah, we'll continue with the video. So you can only do that with shield charge. Another thing that you can also do with shield charge, with your charged shield in sword mode, is whenever you do the weak slash attack here, if you press Y and B, you'll notice you can do a little shield thrust. If you have your shield charge and you do the shield thrust, it'll do a little file burst. Ouch. If you don't have your shield charge, it won't do that file burst. My shield's about to die, so I'll kind of show you that. I'll kind of charge it so I don't go overheat mode. And I do it, I do the file explosion again. Are they the shield thrust? You can see it does a little explosion. Another thing you gain with charged shield is increased defense. So what that means is there's an armor skill in the game, or just like a skill called guard, and what that does, it increases your blocking strength. And what's nice about charge blade is if you charge a shield, it increases that blocking strength automatically. I don't know what the exact level is in this game because they changed the guard level, but just know it's better. That's kind of all you really need to know. Another thing that's cool with like in regards to blocking, and something that's I think new in this game, is the addition of a perfect guarding. And if you perfect guard with charge blade and you have a charged shield, you see how it does a little bit of damage there? If your shield's not charged, it doesn't do that little bit of damage. So it does. So if you do a perfect guard, it'll do like an insane amount of file damage, and you can stun monsters with it. I had done it before. It's really funny when it happens. But aside from sword mode, shield mode, or charged shield also helps your axe mode. It makes your axe mode do more damage. So if I kind of just do a little dash slam, look at that, 59 damage. If I do the rising slash, look at that, 47. Very nice. Another thing to kind of keep in mind with charged shield is that depending on how many files you have like loaded, so you see I have 3, right? That will change the duration of the charged shield. So if you have more files loaded in, then the shield will stay active longer. And this is kind of where I can talk a little bit about the overcharge files. So if I kind of charge here, let's go to red, and I overcharge. Let's go even higher. So now I have overcharge files. As you can see, they're like yellow, they're kind of glowing yellowish, and they have like a little explosion coming out. So overcharge files are also something new, and what they basically do is very simple. And this is something I got off of a website that I'll link in the description, so I'm not like, I'm not stealing info. But what they do is they increase the duration in which your shield stays charged. So overcharge files will make your shield stay charged much longer. But they also increase your file damage whenever you do like attacks like the element discharge here. So they'll make your files do way more damage, or they make those attacks do more damage. So let me do this and boost my shield, and now my shield will stay charged for quite a lengthy period of time. It's like 2-3 minutes or something. Quite long. I think that should be it for shield mode. Most important thing is just to keep your shield charged at all times, or as much as you can. Sometimes it's kind of hard because that's kind of, your shield being charged allows you to play more proactively. It's much easier. Last, in terms of like the weapon charges, is the charged axe or power axe or savage axe mode. And there's 4 ways you can enter this mode. The first way is if you do the focus attack on a wound. So let's do that. As you can see, now my axe icon on the top left is now glowing. Another way you can do it is through mounting. Unfortunately, I don't think you can mount the training mode barrel machine, so kind of tragic. But when you do a mounting and you're like doing the knife attacks to like create the wound, and you do like the weapon attack, that's also a way to go into Savage Axe mode. Another way is through power clashes. So all the shield weapons have the ability to, like, after you like block a certain number of attacks, to do like a little power clash. So after you do the power clash, you can go into Savage Axe mode. Unfortunately, I can't show it here, but you just have to trust me on that. And the last way is if you do a perfect guard. So if I just kind of show Casey here and I press triangle, I can go into Savage Axe mode. You cannot do it on a normal guard. If I try to press the same thing on a normal guard, so let me just hold down guard, right? It'll just do morph slash. So not the same thing. So those are 4 ways to go into axe mode, or power axe mode, or savage axe mode, charged axe mode, whatever you want to call it. Now, what does savage axe mode do for you? Well, a few things. One, it makes your axe mode more better. And how does it make it better? Well, you know, usually when you're doing axe mode, you kind of just like press an attack and it's like, oh man, it just kind of does like this measly like single big hit, right? But what's great about savage axe mode is if you press an attack, so let's say we're going to press triangle to do the rising slash, if you hold it down, it does more hits, as you can see. So if let's say I do it without holding it down, just tap, see, it does 1 hit. But if I hold it down, see, it does 5. And you can do that with every axe attack in Savage Axe mode. So I can do like the Fate Slash, hold it down. Elemental Discharge, hold it down. Do Discharge 2, hold it down. You can even do it with the amped element discharges. If I just tap it, right, it's usually singular and then some final explosions, but if I hold it, right, you can just hold one of the buttons. Same thing with the follow-up. Very nice. So Savage Axe mode is really cool. It basically makes your axe do more damage. And one thing that's also really cool is, well, it does 2 things that are interesting. The best way to showcase that is by charging my files. So if I just do elemental discharge, you'll notice that my file doesn't get used up. Right? So I have 3 and I do elemental discharge, it doesn't get used up. If you don't have Savage Axe mode active, and I'll showcase that here in just a second. Okay, so it turns off. So if I do elemental discharge, you see how it uses up my file there? See, it uses up a file. So what's nice about Savage Axe is that it basically, whenever you do that element discharge attack, it doesn't consume a file. Another nice thing, and I'll showcase it right now while I'm not in Savage Axe mode, is if you do the amped element discharge, notice how it uses 1 file, right? See how it consumes 1 file? Kind of tragic, right? But if you're in Savage Axe mode, ow. Let's go in from the wound. Perfect guarding is a bit tough. Not super hard, but it's pretty lenient. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if I do the elemental discharge, right, no file is permanent. But if I do the amped element discharge, look what happens. See, it consumes half of file. So you're able to just kind of chain these amped elemental discharges together and gain access to a lot of damage. One last thing I think with Savage Axe mode is, as you kind of just attack with it, I don't know if I can showcase it here or not because it kind of takes a lot of time, is as you're just kind of like attacking, eventually your files will actually start to charge up. I don't know the specifics of like how long it takes. It just kind of happens, but it's just like something to keep in mind, that if you're in Savage Axe mode, your files can also charge, albeit way slower. So if you want to charge your files, just, you know, go back into sword mode and do the charge rising slash. It's a much better thing to do. One last thing that I think I didn't mention with the charge shield, so if I just quickly boost my shield, or charge my shield with elemental boost, is whenever you do the amped elemental discharge attack, we just charge a file so I can kind of showcase it better. With charge shield, you can do discharge, and if you press Y, if you press triangle circle again, or Y and B, you can do amped, super amped elemental discharge, or SAED for short. This is a super huge big attack that unloads every file that you have loaded up. It's not the most useful attack on a lot of monsters that tend to be smaller. So like Chotacabra, for instance, is kind of small. So if you try to do the amped elemental or the super amped elemental discharge, more often than not, a lot of those file explosions are going to miss him. But against much bigger monsters, it will be it's a pretty like good tool. However, I recommend just kind of staying in Savage X mode and just kind of going, you know, unloading, but definitely just toss it out every now and then because it is like a big chunk of damage. But I believe that should be the basics of the sword, shield, and axe mode, and what the charged sword, the charged shield, and the charged axe do. So now I think it's time to move on to the advanced part of Charge Blade. So the advanced part of Charge Blade isn't really like advanced per se. It's just that certain moves that Charge Blade has and other shield weapons have a certain property called a guard point. And what that means is that when you do the move, if a monster hits you while you're doing the move, you're going to be able to block the attack if it's timed correctly. And if you want to know which moves those are, I'll showcase it to you. But the game also has a way of telling you. So the first guard point on Charge Blade, and the one that's kind of most popular, is the More Slash. So if you hold guard and press triangle and do this More Slash, you can guard that little, like, when you see like the character kind of put the shield in front of them, like right there, that's a guard. You can guard when a monster hits you there. Another one that's also good is in axe mode. If you do the anti-elemental discharge and the round slash, that's also a guard point. That will also count as a guard if the monster hits you right at the end there. And the last one, I believe, there might be one more, but I believe it's just these three, is if you do the elemental boost. Let me just kind of charge files. If you do the elemental boost, this also counts as a guard point. Now the game actually has a way of telling you which of these are guard points. And if you pay really close attention, you'll notice that when I do the More Slash, my shield is going to turn white. Did you see that? You see how it turned white? I'll also do here with the round slash, right? So I'll do it. See how it turns white there for a second? That's the game's way of telling you that that's a guard point. I'll do the elemental boost. Show you. Look at that. See how it blinks white there for a second? That's the game's way of showing you that that is a guard point. The thing with guard points is they're useful if you're kind of like in the middle of an attack and you were like, oh no, the monster's gonna, you know, dive bomb on me. Let me, like you're in axe mode and you're like, oh no, the monster's gonna dive on me, right? So you kind of do like this and you like do a perfect time and boom, right? The monster, hits your shield and you don't take 1,000,000 damage, right? The downside with guard points is that you don't gain, you can't perfect guard with them, right? So with normal guard, you can perfect guard. Oops, that's not a perfect guard. Sorry. The timing is actually pretty lenient. It's just kind of, I'm kind of so bad at doing them. There we go. That's a perfect guard. You'll kind of know what it is when it's like that loud noise and like the string kind of flashes white. Because with perfect guard, you gain access to Savage Axe mode. But with guard points, you can't perfect guard with them, so you can't gain access to Savage Axe. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. Right, as you can see, I just kind of showcase a guard point there. They're still useful if you're like in the middle of doing an attack and you kind of like, think a monster's about to hit you and you can, save yourself basically. So that's just kind of like an advanced way to, that's just like the more advanced part of Charge Blade is kind of learning these guard points and learning how to like utilize them properly. Because if you do, you get to do some really cool stuff. I'd say if you just kind of look up Charge Blade, if you look up like Charge Blade speedrunners and stuff, you'll see them kind of do this stuff a lot. You'll see them utilize guard points a lot, and it's always really fun to watch. But it's pretty much just like the advanced part of Charge Blade. Maybe there's something else, but for me, that's what I believe is like the most hard part of Charge Blade, is just kind of like understanding guard points. Everything else is just kind of like, here's a shield, here's the axe, here's the sword, here's how you charge them, here's the files do, and so on. So that's it for the advanced parts, and now we'll do the tips. So for tips and tricks, the only thing I can really say are a few things. One, that I don't see many people talk about online, that I wish more people talked about, is if you're in a hunt and you have to fight like two monsters, right? Let's say you have to fight like a Chatakabra and a Doshaguma, right? At the same time, right? One thing you can do is, let's say you go kill the Chatakabra, but you kill him and you're like, oh no, I don't have any files, my shield, right? I have nothing, I have no files, my shield isn't charged, I have nothing. I gotta go fight this, Doshaguma, he's gonna beat me up, right? Incorrect. Because while the monster is dead, a monster is dead, you can interact with its body in two ways. One, you can carve it, right, for parts, but it's also still hittable, meaning that if you kill a monster and, do attacks on it, it will charge your shield, or sorry, charge your files, right? You can charge your files off the dead monster. I know this isn't a dead monster, but you know, this is something to go try for yourself and kind of see, and you get amazed. You're like, oh my god, what the hell? No one's ever said this. But you can use dead monsters as a quick way to charge your files, right? So I get my files charged up, right? Get my shield charged up, right? Charge them up again. Boom. There we go. Now I can go fight that Doshagama with full confidence in tow. Another tip is if you're thinking about like what skills you want to use for Charge Blade, especially for like early game or like you're in high rank, some good like defensive ones is usually just guard or guard up. Both of them are pretty good together. Guard isn't as necessary. If you want guard, just put like level 1 guard. You don't need level 3 guard, but it does, I mean, it does help, but you don't really need it because like I mentioned, the charge shield increases your defensive like blocking capabilities. But not only that, and something I didn't really say with the perfect guard, oops, is that if you perfect guard, it also increases your blocking capabilities, right? So you see kind of like how I didn't move back too much there, but if I, you know, block this, see it kind of like move back a little bit. So perfect guarding also increases your blocking capabilities or your blocking like strength. So guard isn't like the most necessary with Charge Blade, but it's not bad to have if you're like not really good at getting the perfect guard down and you're kind of like playing a sword mode a lot. So it's not bad. Guard up is a pretty good skill for any shield weapon because it allows you to guard against attacks that are considered unguardable. So it usually tends to be breath attacks that monsters do. I can't really give any examples, but just any monster that has like when they shoot like a breath out of their mouth, it's like a continuous beam, you know what I mean? Like they shoot like a flamethrower out of their mouth, kind of, or something similar. That's usually what guard up is used for. It's a useful skill. If you can fit it in, I'd recommend it. In terms of other defensive skills, just like the typical like divine blessing is good, stun resistance, recovery up, things of that nature. But in terms of offensive skills, there's quite a few that you can do. I can actually showcase one with the Raidao blade here, or two actually. So there's focus, which increases or kind of, I guess, it basically reduces the charge time. So if you do, so basically what that means is that if you do the charged rising slash, it will make it so that your charged rising slash will just go to red pretty much instantly. So basically it makes it much faster to kind of cycle through your files. Another good skill with this Raidao charge blade that I can show is load shells, which if you can read it, I don't know if you can read it, but basically if you get level 2 load shells, it says that charge blade files, or yeah, charge blade charges 5 files on the yellow gauge. So right, if you have yellow like I do and you charge it, typically it does 3, as you can see with the 3 overcharge. But if you have you know, level 2 of load shells, then it does 5. Not a bad skill to have, not bad at all. Another good damage skill to get is Flare, because it creates wounds more easily. And charge, you know, one of the ways you get into Savage Axe mode with Charge Blade is through creating wounds and doing the focus attack. So that's a pretty good skill to have. I've heard that Flare is a little bit bugged of a skill right now, so level 2 is like what you should go for instead of level 5, so keep that in mind. Another good skill is Burst, and what Burst does is, if I go into Savage Axe right here just to kind of help explain it. So what Burst does, I don't have it active right now, but what Burst does is that if you do a bunch of attacks in succession, so like with dual blades, right? So if you do like a bunch of quick attacks in like succession, you'll get a huge like attack boost. In Charge Blade, Savage Axe mode is perfect for Burst, right? Because if you do the attack and hold it down, it basically does 5 already, right? Boom, boom, right? It just does so many hits. So Burst is a really good skill. In terms of other good skills, this one's a more my personal preference that I've been playing with for the entire game, but I've been using a Paralysis Charge Blade with the Paralysis attack skill, and oh my god, it's kind of disgusting how strong it is. Because with Savage Axe and the level 3 Paralysis attack, which what Paralysis attack does as a skill is that it increases like the paralysis buildup. So you get a paralysis Charge Blade, you get Paralysis attack level 3, you give your cat a paralysis weapon, and you're just gonna like paralyze the monster pretty consistently, and it's gonna be kind of like sad because you just made the game super easy for yourself. But if you're okay with that, then that's something I kind of recommend because it's really fun. One last, I guess, tip or trick I can kind of say is whenever you're doing attacks with the sword mode, you know, you do like little slash attacks here, you can hold a direction and press circle or B to do a fade slash. Oh, if I can just not suck at doing it. And you can do that in like any direction. So this is really good for like repositioning. Oh yeah, and the Fade Slash has a guard point. I completely forgot about that. That's my bad, actually. I don't play around with the guard points too much, but that's Fade Slash also has a guard point. You can see the shield turn white there for a second, see? So that's something else too. That's my fault, but something else to keep in mind. Axe Mode has something similar where if you just kind of moving, you can do the Fade Slash to kind of help like reposition. All right, if you go back and you do the backstep slash, but it's a bit slower, so it's kind of just better to go into sword mode and kind of like use the mobility that sword mode provides. But overall, I think that should be it. I'm sorry if I kind of stumbled over my words a little bit. I have like a mini script that I kind of made to read, but it's not like super duper proper. So most of this is just kind of like improv slash off the top of my head. But yeah, I think that should be it. There might be a few things I might be missing or forgetting because, like I said, I don't think Charge Blade's a complex weapon. I just think it's a very like dense weapon. There's just like so many things happening. I really recommend playing it. It's definitely a really like super fun, super rewarding weapon, and you can do a lot of really fun, flashy moves. So yeah, give Charge Blade a try. And if you watch this video and you're somebody who's new to the game or somebody who's like a veteran player who's never played Charge Blade before, and you know, you watch this, please let me know down in the comments if this guide was helpful. This is my first time making something like this. I've taught Charge Blade to a friend of mine earlier because this is a friend of mine this is like their first monster in a game, and they're playing Charge Blade. So I taught it to them, and they seem to understand it pretty well. So I feel like I pretty much kind of told you guys what I told them. So I feel like I did a pretty decent job explaining like the basics and some of the advanced stuff and some little tips here and there. But like I said, Charge Blade has a lot of things, so I definitely might have like forgotten or missed a thing here or there. If you watch this and you were like, oh wait, he missed this, you know, write it down in the comments and I can like pin it / like it. That way people who are watching can see what I missed and, you know, read the comments and be like, oh, that's what he missed. Okay. So that we have, you know, all the information necessary. Thank you for watching, and I hope this guide was helpful to you. If it wasn't, then I'm sorry, I guess. But I hope you have a wonderful day, regardless of if you like it or not. Thank you.